I recently made another trip over to Afghanistan and Iraq. Tonight, some of my impressions from Afghanistan, where we first launched the War on Terror. October 7th, 2001. Less than a month after 9/11, and American retaliation against al-Qaeda and the Taliban erupts across Afghanistan. The Taliban had come to power after the Russians were driven out of the country, and Osama bin Laden fled to Afghanistan after being driven out of the Sudan. Together, their terrorist atrocities would appall the civilized world, and many of the Taliban atrocities were committed within their own country. Atrocities that were not limited to the Afghan people. They also vandalized or destroyed much of their country's historic legacy. Most glaring example, the ancient, massive Buddhas of Bamiyan. Predating Islam, the figures, which towered almost 180 feet high and were carved out of the massive sheer cliff, had stood for some 1,800 years. But representative of another religion, the Taliban could not stand the fact that they still stood. Despite a worldwide outcry, the Taliban trained their artillery on the Buddhas and blasted away all day. Irrefutable evidence of their absolute hatred for all other religions and their total disregard for the heritage and history of their own country. Though the Buddhists are long gone from this region, the local Muslims did not hate the icons of another religion, but they hated the Taliban. 18-year-old Zakir told me why.
The Taliban killed my father. And they describe the Buddha, and they describe our culture. The Buddha is our culture, very important in our country.
The tourists the Buddhas attracted to the village of Bamiyan were the principal industry of the community. The man who guided us through the ruins of the site is the Sergeant Major of the Afghan National Army, the highest-ranking NCO in the 4-year-old fledgling force. Rashan Safi is 34. As a teenager, he and his dad were among those who fought the Russians and drove them out of their country. Today, he fights the resurgence of the Taliban, who in recent weeks have launched a wave of vicious attacks on coalition and Afghan forces.
In this duration of 1,800 years, we had good religious people, smart religious people. Why they didn't destroy that? That's not only these things. They were against about the economy of Afghanistan. If you go to the north of Afghanistan, why they were cutting the trees, grapes, agriculture they were doing. That's why. Why was that?
You can hear the frustration that drove Rashan to fight the Taliban. Later in our journey, I asked him how long he would stay in the army.
I'm staying for the Afghanistan nation last drop of my blood.
Patriotism, a trait that I found common among many Afghans. But Rashan is an uncommon man. Command Chief Kurt Brownhill of Central Command, Rashan's counterpart, explains that best.
What a national treasure. What an amazing man. What a leader in the future of Afghanistan. He just represents all that is good in Afghanistan and represents all that we just take for granted in our own country.
As remarkable as it is, our military isn't perfect. At age 4, the Afghan Army has a long way to go. People like Rashan certainly have the courage and patriotism to fight for their freedom, but there are so many other elements essential to an effective fighting force. The need to train, arm, and feed an army is obvious, but there are a myriad of other things we don't customarily consider. For instance, something as simple as uniform insignia all have to be designed and made from scratch. But it appeared to me it's all coming together with remarkable alacrity. And today, despite the recent increase in Taliban activity, the streets of most Afghan cities and towns, once virtually silent, bustle with commerce, and motorists can listen to music or any station they wish. Not just Taliban propaganda. Women can work outside the home and move about without having to wear burqas. Young girls can get an education, and men won't be beaten if they choose not to wear beards. While they must still fight to secure their freedom, with the help of a 37-nation coalition and NATO, Rashan Saleh, who said he would stay in the Afghan army till his last drop of blood, may not have to.